Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this webinar that's been hosted by AHDB Beef and Lamb. My name's Amy Fawcett. I'm the Knowledge Exchange Manager for the Midlands. We're delighted to welcome Max Tweedie this evening. Max is the National Beef Genetics Manager for Beef and Lamb Genetics in New Zealand, and his presentation this evening is going to be on the beef progeny testing programme that he manages, the results from that programme, and how the farmers in New Zealand are using the information to shape their breeding programmes. So the plan of action this evening is that Max will run through his presentation and there'll be time for questions at the end. You guys will all stay muted throughout, but if you have got any questions as we go through, you can type them into the box on the right hand side of your screen where it says questions. So we've got over 100 people registered this evening for the webinar. I'd just like to thank Chloe in the background who's keeping everything working smoothly, hopefully. We shouldn't have any technical problems, but if we do, just bear with us. We'll obviously try to keep these to a minimum. Okay, so without further delay, I will pass over to Max.
Yeah, g'day, and thanks for having me, Amy and AHDB. It's cool to be able to be over in the UK and talk about the things that we're passionate about and a bit about what we're doing and what we've learnt in New Zealand. I'm from a company called Beef and Lamb New Zealand Genetics. We are a subsidiary company of our national levy organisation. So when people kill their sheep and cattle, they pay a fee, and that money goes to all sorts of things. But in this instance, it goes towards beef and lamb genetics, and we're an information infrastructure company, so we provide tools to help people make profitable breeding decisions. We don't buy or sell, breed rams and bulls. We just help provide the service. So that's things like progeny testing and the like. We're funded by levies, but also some money from government and some third-party stuff as well. Currently, our program encompasses all sorts of sheep stuff, including SIL, which is the New Zealand Sheep Genetic Evaluation. But most importantly, what we do is beef genetics, and that's where I come into things. We progeny test, so we use lots of bulls over dairy cows and beef cows, and we also have some other projects with our mates in Aussie, and when we look at different factors like maternal cow performance. Who am I? I'm from a small area in New Zealand, and known as Hawke's Bay on the east coast. You'll see that wee yellow star on the map over on the right there. I come from a commercial farm, but I've got a business that I run on my parents' farm, breeding Angus bulls, and also of course have this role managing our beef genetics research program. Our New Zealand beef industry, probably a few things to lay out and to let you know about that might give a wee bit of context. So over the last 10 to 15 years, New Zealand beef farmers have been marginalised. By that I mean we've been pushed into the steeper country, into the stuff that into the area of land that is less desirable, because dairy farming has been more profitable. And when something is more profitable, typically that land changes use. And in New Zealand's case, it's been dairy farming. So all the good flat land has been converted. We're now at a point where that boom is trailing off, and so we're actually having sheep and beef farms that are going back into sheep and beef. So that's always interesting. Beef cattle and cows are nearly always run with sheep in New Zealand. That's pretty typical. Most of our situations are outside. There's no housing, and there's very little grain feeding or supplement grain at any time of the year with cattle, and that's mostly rotational grazing, so moving around paddocks and regular shifting. A lot of people have gone away from beef cows because they've been less profitable, and have gone on to finishing cattle where they can, obviously environment dependent, and that's largely been driven by the fact that we've got a heap of surplus of dairy beef calves from the dairy industry. And ultimately the decisions, the bull selections and the like, genetic gain is determined by New Zealand beef breeders. There aren't other big corporate companies that are part of that. It's the breeders that make the genetic gain, so it's in the farmers' hands. And so we set about to establish the beef progeny test, and it came about as a result of sort of four major questions. And the first one was, what is the right type of cow for New Zealand hill country? And this is a question that's often at the front of mind for a lot of beef breeders, and that is, what does that cow look like, and how do we describe her? Is it an 800 kilo cow winning a whopping big calf, or is it a 600 kilo cow winning a smaller calf? Is it that cow that holds condition year round, or is it that cow that loses a large amount of body weight in the winter outside New Zealand and then picks it up, lifts and gets in calf early in the season? All of these things and the different ways those cows are characterised are contentious, and so we set about to describe what is the right type of cow for hill country. The second one issue being is what sort of cattle are required to hit market specs. We've got a developing, emerging market where eating quality is paid for, where cattle are graded in the chiller after slaughter, and that determines things like marbling and the like. And so what are the sort of cattle that are going to hit those programs and do it well? Can we have both? Can we balance that right type of cow that we've described and to have excellent cattle that eat well? Is that possible? And fourth, do we have the tools to make sure we can achieve these things? So they were the questions, and as a result, we established the beef progeny test. And the beef progeny test has 3 objectives. The first one is to quantify the value of investment in better genetics. So if you do pay more for a bull and he's got better EBVs, do you get your bang for your buck? And quantify, if we do spend the money, what's the result? 2, demonstrate the tools, to show best use of tools like AI, using breeding values and technologies like that. Show the best use of those tools. And the third one is being to improve the toolkit. So if we're going to describe the cow, let's make that into tools we can use for selection. But most importantly, do it on New Zealand commercial beef farms. So do it on places where cattle are usually run, and not in stud herds that are well fed or research herds, situations like that, but do it out where cattle and cows are run in New Zealand. And so these objectives are always at front of mind when we're doing any work within the beef progeny test. So we're doing 50 bulls a year, and we're doing that at the moment on 5 properties. And in our selections of bulls, we'll have anything from yearling sires, so young bulls with not a lot of information and low accuracy, anything up to older proven sires. So some of our older bulls are up to 12 years old, that have been used widely and have many calves. And we're doing this at the moment across 11 breeds, and so dominantly we're using Angus, Hereford, Simmental sires, but we're also as far as 11 breeds in the most recent cohort, and that's across 3,000 females by synchrony, fixed time AI programs. 1,500 of those cows are dairy cows, and the other 1,500 are beef cows in this last cohort. So we get to test a big range of bulls, a big range of breeds, and really see how the tools that we've got are able to deliver. And we're doing this on a range of farms, and this is the really important part, is that there's lots of different environments in New Zealand, just as there is in every other country. And in the UK, we've been able to see a big range of environments in the last week, which has been really interesting. But in the north, most yellow star we've got there, Whangarā farms, they're a big, extensive, dry summer East Coast farm, and they have mild winters, and with a property that has 2,500 cows. It's extensive, but it's a real test. The cattle are some of our lightest cattle because the mobs are large, the stocking rate's high, and a real chance to put pressure on animals. A real range. We've got Rangatike Station, that number 2 property, which is in the central North Island. They have a 150-day winter. Cows lose as much as 150 kilos over the winter, and they come out of the spring, come into mating mud fat, and they're very late calving, and we get a great chance to see how cattle do in that situation. It's the farm's dead flat, and it's pumice country, so it's sort of soil that you could pour water through, and it runs out like a sieve. And I've rode down to like a property number 5, which is Cabafay. Cabafay Station has got irrigated land, and it really allows us to, on a grass-based system, process cattle and kill them early. And so there's never a shortage of grass. And of course, Wairiki Estate, which is our dairy farm, and just a real chance to look at how bulls are going in lots of different environments. We spread the use of those bulls throughout the different environments and see how those tools are stacking up. So what we do, if we start with the dairy beef situation, we tag those calves at birth. We take a DNA sample from those calves, which we later on use to assess their ability to pass on their merit via their genes through technological genomics. But at that stage, we say, okay, look, this is when the calves are born. We've got a date of conception on them because we fetal age scan their mothers, and we can look at gestation length. We weigh the calves and we record their calving ease. On the beef cows, we don't look at so much detail in the birth situation, but we do go really hard in everything else. So we follow through we weigh those calves regularly. When they come up to 18 months of age, we structurally assess those animals. We scan them using ultrasound scanning for things like back fat and rump fat, for eye muscle area and marbling, and that's a live indicator of eating quality. We use that, and then we process the steers. We slaughter those steers, and we take as many as 8 measurements in the meat plant. And when those cattle have been slaughtered, they're hung up and chiller assessed. So we take out open up the carcass at the 12th and 13th rib site and assess that carcass for anything from meat color and fat color to things like ossification, marbling, and the like. We take a heap of measurements at that stage. And then with the heifers that are replacements, so the maternally side, we'll follow those through. We scan their ovaries and to see if they're pubescent, if they're showing a corpus luteum before we put the bull out. We also at the same time collect information on the antral follicle count, so the
Sorry, everybody. I think Max is having some technical difficulties.
Just bear with me.
herd because they have because they're skinny or they're not getting in calf, and all these different things influence stayability. So why are they staying in the herd? Is it because they're there for a long time, or because they're there for a good time? And so all of these different measurements we collect to test the performance of these bulls in these different environments. And so with the beef progeny test aside, it's really important to consider what you want to achieve on your farm. And we've had a great week going around these different talks, talking to people from different parts of the UK, and really seeing what drives their businesses, what drives profitability on their farms. And so if you have the time, consider like what's making money in your business, what's costing you money, where are the bits in your suckler cow operation that you could improve, and then consider some of the breeding values that might match up and actually drive home the genetic improvement components so you can make more money. And we've done this during the week by breaking out, what drives value on the kill sheet, how we can improve our cattle after weaning, and then how we can really improve that cow. And all of these things are only as good as the improvement you can make. So consider where you could or should be best to make an improvement. And it comes down to a really basic equation that I think probably drives value in any suckler herd in any place in the world. And that is the more calves you can have times by how heavy or how much weight in those calves you've got to sell by the cents per kilo. So how can we make our calves more valuable? How can we have more of them, and how can we get them there quickly? And of course, all of that is only as good as the cost of input, and we always take the cost of the input out. So we need to make these cattle cheap to run, and we need to maximize the top line in order to be profitable in a suckler herd. But you know, we need to match up that bull, and the bull represents 80% of the potential genetic gain in your herd. So you can do so much more on a genetics front by selecting the right bull than you can by selecting your heifers every year that replace or culling cows. The bull is the most important part in the genetic gain part of your herd. So we've got this idea that people say, look, I use limousines, and it's all about getting a good Limousin bull. I use Simmental's, or I use Belgian Blues or British Blues. The most important thing is that cattle are very different, and we've got a heap of different bulls here, and they all look quite different, you know, from the blue bull at the top down to our Texas Longhorn at the bottom right-hand corner, even the Spos Indicus bull, the Brahman, at the top. You know, he's got loose skin, a large pizzle, floppy ears, and skin like a roly toilet paper dog. You know, these cattle are all very different from each other, and interestingly enough, these bulls are as different from each other as these bulls are, which are all Angus. So you know, there's a real opportunity to find the bull for your operation, find the right pick, and you know, we need to consider that you're not just buying an Angus bull, you're buying the best bull, and for your requirements. And there are so many different types. So there is as much variation within a breed as there is between breeds. And there's lots of things that influence the way the bull performs. So we've got a horn here for bull here, and you know, when you consider that there's lots of different things outside of his genetics that have influenced the way he looks, he walks around, he moves. And so the more things that that affect him that we need to take into account, so that we can really work out what in fact is genetic. So all of things like these, you know, if he's out of a heifer, we expect him to have had less milk, so he's going to be smaller. If he's a twin, well, you know, he's not going to have a greater chance. If we forgot to drench him today, or if he's fed differently in this paddock to a bull in another paddock, you know, that is going to influence the way that bull looks. And so if we don't take into account all of these things that make animals different, then we're really just guessing at what their performance is going to be to pass on to their calves. And this is a context. We've got two fellas here, Brian at 800 kilos and Richard at 880, and they're sound. They're handy-looking bulls. They fit our requirement for type, and they're at a multi-vendor sale, say something like Carlisle. Right now, that's all the information you have, and you need to choose which bull. Well, that's quite difficult. And if I was to give you more information, to say, look, Brian's in fact out of the heifer, he's been on forage only, whereas Richard's out of a mixed age cow, and he's had some hard feed at some stage. You know, even with that amount of information, we're able to maybe adjust in our heads why we might choose Richard over Brian or Brian over Richard, but really there simply isn't enough information. And if we don't take into account all the things that make bulls different, then we can't really tell what's going to be passed on to their calves. And you know, all of these ideas are underpinned by this BLUP technology. You know, you don't have to know what those letters mean, but you have to know what they stand for. And that is the best prediction we can make of this animal as a parent, as a sire. And interestingly enough, the same technology is used in salmon, in pine trees, in seeds. The same technology is used in dairy cows, in grass, in goats, water buffalo, sheep, corn, anything. And if this technology didn't work the world over, it would have to be the world's biggest conspiracy, because there's millions and millions of dollars invested in BLUP technology throughout the world. It's the same stuff that we use for cattle. It's the same stuff that they use. So we have to wonder, could it be conspiracy? Could this stuff not work? An EBV, very easily, it's an estimated breeding value. It's a number that represents the animal's merit as a parent. So it's what we're going to pass on to our calves. And that's the bit we're keen on, what they're going to pass on. So when we see a bull and he's got a lean EBV, but the bull himself, lean EBV for fat, but in fact the bull himself is very fat and very thick, we've got to remember that this number represents what that bull's going to pass on to his calves. And that EBV takes into account all the information possible. It adjusts for all the things that make them different and gives you the best estimate of that animal as a parent. It takes into account the bull's family and how all of his family have performed, his own performance. It gives you the best estimate. And of course, if he has any calves, that'll be contributing, or if we have some information from his genes, from genomics, well, that'll be contributing as well. In the UK, there's not a lot of cattle that have got genomic tests. That's improving with different breeds, and that's really cool. But typically, we won't expect 2-year-old bulls to have calves yet. So we're relying on the top two. They're reported in actual units, so that helps. That makes sense. And again, it's describing the genetics independent of the environment. At this stage, most breeding those only allow you to compare within breeds rather than between breeds, as we can see with the breed plan breeding those, which represent a big part of the industry over here. But there are other options like the new AHDB multi-breed carcass breeding values that do compare across breeds that will only let you compare within the continental group or the native group of between them, but they are really useful breeding values derived from the BCMS data. But breeding values are produced. Right, so the beef progeny test, how can we guarantee that tools like breeding values that I've just described, that they actually work? And we have to work through this scenario, what we expect to see versus what we got. And I'm going to put a bit of a scenario up here, and hopefully you'll be able to follow me as I go. So we've got bull 2 there. He's got an EBV of 40, bull 1 at 20, bull 3 at 60. So although there is 20 kilos difference between each of those bulls, the sire only represents 50% of the genes in the calf, and thereabouts, but we'll leave it with 50%. So the sire only represents half. So the difference in actual calf weight is in fact 10 kilos. Half of the benefit is passed on from the sire to his calves. You're buying a bull, you're using them across your cows, so half the genes are from the sire. 10 kilos lighter will be bull 1, and 10 kilos heavier will be bull 3. And if we just randomly slap on some calf weights, these are pretty average New Zealand calf weights, the sort of weights that we wean our calves at, probably very different to yours, as I've learned. Bull 2 is in the middle at 235, 10 kilos lighter. Bull 1, 10 kilos heavier. Bull 3. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to put those bulls with your EBVs matched up to their average calf weight, and we're going to line those up on a graph. So there we go. Each one of those blue dots, they represent a bull, his EBV matched up to his average of his calves. And there you can see that dot in the middle there. You can see his EBV of 40 down the bottom, relative to his calf weight of 235, and so on for the other bulls. And of course, there's always a spread of calves. The average doesn't represent the range. So we've put up some, a range of weights to each one of those dots representing a bull's calves. The important thing to remember is that this line is the way we can match up our expected to our actual calf weights. So that line of 0.5, that's saying for every kilo we lift, we expect half a kilo in actual calf weight. Rightio, so look at that line of 0.5, that's what we expect the line to be. Now we're going to line up and show you what we actually saw on size EBVs relative to their calf weights across all 5 of the farms in the first year. So there we go. We're hoping for a slope of 0.5. We've got a slope of 0.495. Unfortunately, we missed out on the mouthful, but pretty much for 200 day weight, for how well that bull's calves wean, our actual was just about our expected, and very close to what we hoped. And then we look at 400 day weight, not too bad again. 410 grams was a line slope of 0.4, pretty good. And then if we go back out all the way out to our 18-month weight, our EBV for 600 days, a slope of 0.45. We're getting really close what we expected to what we actually saw across those properties. So that's pretty cool. And look, here again, here's in the number terms. So if we matched up what our bull we expected to what we actually got, it turned out 90% of the size EBV turned to actual calf weight. So we found that pretty convincing. And across all of the EBVs, all 18 traits that we were able to look at, 73% of the size EBVs turned to actual calf performance. So we were pretty convinced that these EBVs, well, they're actually working. And then now the question is, how do we go about and use them? And the important thing is to remember is that, we're able to do this on 5 commercial farms in New Zealand with a range of environments. On that year, we mated 2,400 cows by AI. We used 5 breeds. We used bulls that had low accuracy, young bulls, and we used old bulls. So anything that could be tested, any way to put pressure on whether or not those breeding values were performing in New Zealand, well, we did it. And that was our result. So that was really encouraging. I just want to show you, introduce to you a few of our beef progeny test farmers. On the left-hand side, we have there Simon Lee from Mendip Hills. So he's got 1,100 cow herd, Hereford cow herd in North Canterbury, a steep farm at the back. And, he's sort of changed how he's operating as a result of what the information that's come out. There we go. That's James Van Behamen in the middle. He's from Rangatike Station, the farm that looks a wee bit like the moon in the winter with the soil like a sieve. He's just a stock manager on that farm. He's same age as me. And this guy, he's just a stock manager, but he's managing a farm of 20,000 ewes and over 2,000 cows. And his the way he's operating has changed as well. This information is changing the way he's farming. We've got Richard Schofield at the right, which is from Whangarau Farms. I introduced you to you before. Richard is dead keen on breeding values now, and it's one of his number one selection criteria is how well are these cattle going to perform. And so he's changed the way he's operating as well. I think we've found that the farmers are the best storytellers, and so if we're producing new information and we've got things we want to talk about, we think it's worth telling. Then these guys are our champions, and they've done a great job of talking about what we're doing. But we found that underpinning these breeding values is good measurement, and we've had to put the recording back in the hands of our breeders and to make sure that we really can keep driving home good genetic gain into the future. We found that some people like fertilizer, some like cropping, and some like cows, and we hope you're the ones that like cows. And the question is, how do you inspire them to be objective, to want to improve their cow herds, to make more gain? And we found that without subsidies in our situation, without support, if you make it competitive and put these guys in a group and play them off against each other so they do want to improve, that's a real help. And you're able to benchmark and compare between those farms how well they're going. They really enjoy that. But most importantly, put in dollar terms, because at the end of the day, we're here to make money. We're here to be profitable. And we felt like this has given these guys the mandate to measure. A little example here is some kills in our beef progeny test from different farms. So each one of those boxes is a different farm. Each one of those coloured bars represents a different kill. And across every site, there was a vast improvement between their kills and successive kills. And so this percentage is talking about how well they achieved the beef EQ hit rate. So this is including all of the eating quality measurements. This is including all of the different things that underpin good eating in beef cattle. And it's showing that the percentage of those animals that achieve the criteria. And so to begin with, we had quite moderate kills, apart from Cabernet, and then by the end of it, every farm had significantly improved their hit rate. So we made that competitive, and they really changed. I think around 30% is the national average for the number of cattle hitting the Beef EQ, Silverfern Farms Beef EQ program, and these farms doing up to 95%. So they're really doing a great job of doing that. And because we've been able to benchmark between them, we've made it competitive. These guys have really changed their behaviour, and that's cool. And we thought, well, we slap some money on it, put some value to it. That's the bit they're keen on, and that's a bit that drives their suckler operations. And if we converted that to value, just by choosing heavier calves, there's as much as 102 pounds benefit from just choosing the bulls with better EBVs. And if you want it, well, it's there just by choosing those improved bulls. And I put up this picture of Roger Douglas and David Longy, probably not people that you've ever seen, but these are the guys that overnight dropped subsidies off the table for New Zealand farmers in the early 80s. They said, look, we're not going to support you anymore. And that had some major consequences. And some of those effects are still being felt today. But as a result, you know, the New Zealand industry beef industry is better for it. We've come out more resilient, we're more profitable, and that 102 pounds a calf, well, you know, we want that because that's how we have to operate in order to survive. And it's an interesting idea in the situation, you know, in the context of what you guys are dealing with or looking forward to dealing with in the UK. Question is, have we made an impact? Well, we've seen a change in bull sale results, and you know, we've seen genetic improvements, so people changing the way they're selecting their cattle, but there is a risk of dividing people, and it's always important to make sure that we give them the right information and make the best decisions, but keep them on board, because, you know, we want to be an industry that supports each other, and that's always the risk when you have division. I just want to put together another little context. So these two bulls, and, you know, in that first year we did as much. We really were able to use some bulls with really strong EBVs and not so great EBVs. And on the example of 400 day weights, the weight of the calves as yearlings or bulling heifers, has been a word I've heard used to describe them, and we had a real range. And so if we use this percentile bands table, you know, the top lad there, he's in the top 1% with the breeding value, you know, of above 102, and then our bull down here, Powerhouse, at the top 90%. So that shows the full range of the breed. And this percentile band table is a great way to see if a breeding value is good or not so good. So we put it into context to say, well, actually, how much better were top lads calves at 400 days? Well, they were 30.5 kilos heavier, and, you know, that's 64 pounds per head, so per calf. And over the year, have a bull having 40 calves, well, you know, he would be 2,500 pounds better per year. And if we use him for 3 years, 7,600 pounds better over his lifetime. So, you know, there's a real opportunity to grab that value just by choosing better bulls. And just want to draw your attention to this, these percentile band driven EBV bar graphs. Don't worry about the numbers. If you can use this makes things so much simpler. You know, where the end of those colored bars hits, draw your eye down to the bottom. It'll tell you the percentile band that bar or that trait is in. And these traits are grouped in their colors. So the yellow bars are the calving age traits, the green bars are the growth. And if they are facing towards the right, they're more preferable, and they're facing towards the left, they're less preferable. And that middle line is our average. So anything above average will go towards the right, and everything below will go towards the left. So quite quickly we can say, look, this sire here, by his yellow bars, he's harder calving, but he's got outstanding growth. And you know, just by using that alone, that picture, we can look at any breed. We don't have to know the breeding values, and we can quite quickly say, look, this is what we're after. And so if you go back to the idea of establishing a genetic plan, determining what your objectives are by the things that are making you money, the things that are costing you money in your business, the things that you might want to improve, or maybe just hold where they are because you feel like you're doing a great job of them. Well, this is the next step. This is identifying which those traits are, and then putting into context by finding that right bull. So do a genetic plan and put it into use. I'd just like to thank the AHDB for bringing me over here, and the British Cattle Breeders Conference for having me as well earlier in the week. I've really enjoyed my time and getting to learn about the cattle over here, and you know, also being able to share what we've been doing and how that might be usable and how you might be able to apply it. And also just to all my progeny test sites and farmers for all the work they do. You know, we enjoy working with them, and of course the people that help sponsor the program. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Max. Just before we go on to questions, Max very briefly touched on the AHDB National Genetic Evaluation carcass traits. Max, will you just talk? That's it, brilliant, thank you. Just to explain these a little bit more before we go on to questions. So the EBVs that we're all used to using come from pedigree performance recording data. These new EBVs actually come from BCMS data, abattoir kill sheets, and then we fill in the gaps with the pedigree performance recording. So these are made using commercial data from commercial animals. And they're directly linked to the things that beef producers get paid for, so the Europe grid. So we've got 5 new EBVs, you can see them on the screen: carcass weight, carcass conformation, which is the Europe grid, carcass fat class, which is also the Europe grid, carcass weight, and average daily carcass gain. So these are set across 2 bases, as Max said, so a continental base and a native base. So you could compare an Aberdeen Angus to a Hereford, or a Charolais to a Blue, but you couldn't compare across those bases. But until now, we've not had the ability to compare at all. So that's a brand new thing as well. So you can find more information. We've got an information leaflet on the Beef and Lamb website under the Better Returns breeding section if you want to find out any more information from those. There is a separate website that you can put your bull ear tag numbers into, and if you've been recording sires for a long time, they should come up. Or equally, you can access these. Say you were looking at a bull through the Breed Society website. There's now links down the left-hand side that should say AHDB National Genetic Evaluation, and it will take you through to those. Can we just go to the next slide, Max, please? He's not listening.
It's no longer helping me.
No, is it not working?
There we go.
Oh, brilliant. Perfect. That's great. So my one plea to you guys is these EBVs can only be generated if we have the sires registered on the passports of the calf. Currently, we're only at 23% of sires recorded on BCMS, which is an astonishingly low figure. So please, 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 if you know the sire of a calf, please register it when you register them with BCMS, because without that information, we just have to throw that data away. It's completely useless. So it's relevant to dairy bred calves as well as suckler bred. Obviously, there's situations where you might not know the sire, but if you do know them, please put it in there. The ear tag's fine. If you type it in once correctly, then it should just come up again the next time in like a drop-down box, so you only need to do it correctly once. So yeah, that is my plea to you. If you want to get involved with the campaign, we're running a social media campaign at the moment. If you've been doing this or you for a long time, or you want to get involved, the hashtag is #ShoutAboutTheSire. Please support us with that. Right, we'll take some questions. Oh my word, there's a lot. Okay, hang on. Bear with me. Right, so first question, Max. Will continual selection of high carbonese affect carcass quality and weight over so many generations? Has Max gone again?
Sorry, everybody. Please bear with us whilst we get hold of Max.
Right, we're back. I'm with Max. So, first question, Max. Will continual selection of high carbonese, will continual selection of high carbonese affect carcass quality and weight over so many generations?
Yes, so I'll just talk to carcass weight first. There's a relationship between genetic correlation between birth weight, growth, mature weight, and carcass weight. So as you lift your birth weight, so too does your growth, and so too does the weight of your cows, and how many kilos of carcass weight that you might kill. So there's an inherent relationship there, and that just happens as we see it. We pick the bigger cattle, and the calves are born heavier, and therefore so are our cows, and our carcasses become heavier. But unless we're to break the relationship and use breeding values, it's not possible to have calves that are born lighter and grow and also grow fast. So to break that relationship, we have to have breeding values. And so if we look at saying, will calving ease ruin our carcass weight? Well, yep, most likely, but you have to increase your growth at the same time and look to increase your carcass weight at the same time in order to maintain the good production value by increasing the ease of calving. On the carcass quality front, my understanding there is no relationship with marbling or eye muscle area. So we just need to make sure that we keep lifting our breeding values for all the things that are important and drive value for us.
Okay, just want to double check, Katie and Chloe, can everybody hear now?
Yeah, we can hear, thanks.
Brilliant, okay, that's fine. So EBVs are hugely useful, but how important are breeding indexes on keeping breeding decisions going in the right direction? It seems very easy to select too far in one direction sometimes without the balance of an index to support the EBVs themselves.
Yeah, cool. So, dollar indexes are always the most preferred choice because they will help us balance up the various figures. And I didn't talk about indexes in my talk, but it is the best way to make the most profitable decision. That obviously is really important by feeding good market information into it and regularly updating them, the indexes, so they do represent the right direction for where the market is and how it's changing. But if we can use dollar indexes, it will help us balance up all the combination of those traits. The risk is that we can have two bulls at the same dollar index. They might be very different, and they got there from having a different combination. But that does help us ensure we get good variation and good diversity with the same index.
Okay, next question. We've been asked this a lot. How do EBV figures compensate for different feeding regimes?
Yeah, and so that's the beauty of figures, is that we're able to do that. It requires linkage. So having common size of bulls we know things about, having common size between environments. And so if we assume that all feeding within one herd is the same, and we can only do that by having good information. So if you've pulled a few bulls off to go to Carlisle, and those bulls are fed really well and differently to the rest of the bulls, and which are fed, say, just on grass, on forage out in the paddock, we would need to identify those two groups as being different, so the evaluation knows that they can't be directly compared. In the herd situation, so we assume that you've done that, you've separated those groups out, so therefore all animals have been given equal opportunity, providing we've adjusted for those different bulls within that herd. We've got a bull that has calves in this one herd. He's also got calves in another herd that's been fed entirely differently to our first herd. But because we have that sire across both herds, we've got benchmark calves that we can compare how all the other calves are between those two herds. And it really good genetic evaluation, good breeding values, rely on good linkage, also good contemporary grouping, and that's all down to the breeder.
Okay, great. What percentage of New Zealand beef farmers are making decisions based on figures?
Yeah, that's a hard one. And looking across the world, I think we're probably pretty similar to other groups, but other breeds and other countries. But ultimately, we've seen a change. But there is, I said before, there's a risk of division, and so we do have groups that don't believe in the breeding values. Even if we are putting out really good information to say that they are working, but their belief is that maybe they're changing cattle in a direction that's not desirable. And so that's why good indexes are really important, and having good descriptors, good EBVs that describe what we're actually wanting to improve. But I'd say we've got a good majority portion of breeders that are using figures for decisions.
How can these New Zealand techniques be used in Britain? Is it simply taking into account the EBVs?
Yep, I think so. Using them using them to pick the right bulls, because the bull is responsible for 80% of the genetic gain in your herd.
How would you convince more people to perform and to record? What would you say is the single most important factor?
So the way that we've had success is by making it competitive. So having these groups that compare to each other, make it competitive, so they don't want to lose. They want to have the best performance. They want to have the best BFQ hit rates, the best in-calf rates. We like to put it in dollar terms, and people like it in New Zealand. We put it to dollar terms. But we also make sure it's the farmers that the case studies is the farmers telling the other farmers how they're going, and so they really are our champions. And so it's through that we're giving them the mandate to measure, pushing the recording back in the hands of the breeders. But if there's a genuine push-pull where the commercial farmer, where you commercial sucklers, suckler herds are saying, look, we want this, then they will in time change. And I think that's only the most important thing you can do is by choosing the right breeder. And the breeder is the most important thing. So if you can say to them, we want you to be 5-star recording, we want you to be using DNA technology, and we want to see that you are doing this and you can prove it to us, then hopefully those breeders are there and they can find them. And so if you're choosing the right breeder, you're making, most of the time, those bulls will be the right option for you. So push-pull, ask your breeders.
Do you think enough emphasis is put on the genetic potential of the dams?
On the genetic potential of the dams. So is this in the beef progeny test context, or is it in the stud context?
James, is it in the progeny testing or general context? I think he means general context.
I don't think there is enough emphasis based on cows, but that relies on having good descriptors. So I noticed that the pre-pin EBVs in the UK, there's no days to calving. Days to calving sounds like calving ease, but it's actually talking about fertility. It's saying those females are getting calf early in the breeding season and do it year after year. Well, they're the most fertile, and they're the most productive over their lifetimes, and they're the sort of cows we want. But the more EBVs we can have to describe the cows, the better, because at the moment we don't really have the tools to say, look, this cow is more preferable. We've got things like mature cow weight and calving ease and milk, and they're all really relevant. But if we talk about fertility, which is the number one, which is driving more calves, I think I put up that equation that said more calves times by the amount of kilos times by the value of the cents per kilo, and pulling away your cost of input. The more calves you have is the biggest way you can drive profit in the suckler herd. So fertility, that's a real option, and the emphasis on improving the cow, I think that's got a long way to go in terms of genetics here.
Okay, I think this one's referring to the new carcass EBVs. What's the difference between the two new carcass weight EBVs? So your average daily carcass gain is predicting lifetime daily carcass gain, and then your carcass weight EBV is predicting carcass weight at a given slaughter age. So they're both in kilograms, just slightly different. As I said, there's an information leaflet on the BRP website if you want to go and have a bit more of a read about them. Right, we've got time for another couple of questions, if anybody's got some. Just whilst you're thinking, I just wanted to draw your attention to some resources that are on our website. So Max has been talking about generating a genetic plan. We've now got a suckler breeding plan on the website that you can order. It's nothing fancy. It's basically just a visuals tool to go on your office wall, just so that you can think about what you really want to achieve with your herd and which EBVs you need to focus on. And we've also got our BRP resources relating to breeding. Okay, another couple of questions. Does the optimum cow size vary depending on the environment it is operating in? If so, by how much?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question, and it's actually one that's come up a couple of times this week. So cow size is really it's the main way that we determine the maintenance energy requirement of the animal. So her weight tells us how much it costs to maintain her. So we want easy keeping cows, and so if we're in high country and there's limited feed, or the cow has to walk a long way and forage, and it's she's having to walk, well, that cow size is more important than if she's got ad-lib as much feed as she could possibly eat in a lowland situation. But just as, how much she milks affects her maintenance energy requirement, how fat she is. Optimum cow size is it's a hard question to answer, to say, look, this cow is the right size, because it's also important that she produces a really marketable calf, and typically smaller cows produce smaller calves. But in turn, they potentially may have earlier turn-off times and things like that, and so maturity could be a part of it. But optimal cow size is difficult. In New Zealand, I think it would be fair to say we're targeting a 600 kilo cow or lighter in most environments, but we want her to be turning off as much of her body weight in calf as she can at 200 days. So preferably 50%, but that is difficult and obviously limited by feed. So I hope I've answered that in a roundabout way.
Are suckler cow farmers in New Zealand selecting heifers from maternal bulls or using more general purpose bulls?
I think typically it's been more maternal. I think there's a bigger difference between what we call maternal and probably what the UK would call maternal. So we wouldn't be using more of the continental breeds in a maternal cross in really any situation. And so when we say are we selecting more for maternal traits in the heifer as well, potentially we are, but that's more of a type thing because we haven't got really excellent descriptors of the way these cows look, how they perform. So we are in some way limited. But I'd say, there would be a stronger maternal influence in New Zealand than in the UK, probably because of our environment, I think.
Okay, so you're saving all the controversial questions to last. How far behind New Zealand, America and Australia do you think British commercial cattle genetic selection is based on your experience, if at all?
Well, I've learned a lot in this last week, and I probably have a different opinion on it now than I did before. Because if you think about what your breeding objectives are, and let's say that the first, that an important one is the Europe grid, well, you've done a really great job of selecting cattle for that. A really impressive job of improving carcass conformation. If you look at other traits, well, maybe there's been less emphasis on some of the maternal things, so things like calving ease and cow size. But I think that's also a function of your environment as well. And the most important thing is recording. And recording allows good selection decisions. Recording underpins breeding values. And I would say that on the recording front, there is probably some improvement to be made with the British cattle breeding. But overall, I think there's been some really great advancements and things that are important to you.
Okay. Unless there's any more coming, we'll make this the last question. But are any breeds making speedier gains than others? Which is currently the best? If we had a pound every time somebody asked us that.
I'm just going to be a bit of a politician and just sort of weasel my way out of that one. There is throughout the world, there's some breeds that are used more than others, and some that have placed more emphasis on performance. And I think I'll leave it at that one.
Excellent. Okay, right. I would just like to thank you all for tuning in. Anybody wants to listen to this webinar again, it'll be on the YouTube website within the next week. But I'd just like to thank Max very, very much for speaking to us, and have a good evening.
Thanks for having me, Amy. Cheers.